Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Jessie Talley, your faculty coach, and we have made it to 2025. And so, for my first video to kind of come back and reintroduce myself to you all, is entitled The Radical Act of Prioritizing Yourself in Academia. And the reason why I chose this for the first recording in January is because this is the time where we're starting new goals. We're trying to create new processes for us to operate on because we saw that some things weren't working. And so, since we're starting all of these new things, or newness is kind of synonymous with January because it's the first month of the year, I wanted us to kind of focus in on prioritizing ourselves a little bit more. And so I have a few points that I want to kind of talk through to get you thinking, if you haven't been thinking about this already, but to also just make sure that we're doing it, because we all know that in academia, there is this concept that we don't need rest sometimes, and we are constantly working. And so I want us to kind of rethink that going into 25, and especially given our climate and so many things going on in the world, we want to be able to show up in positive manners and in ways that are synonymous with our wellness. So let's get into it. So the first thing we have to remember, which you've probably heard this before, is that you can't pour from an empty cup. So that means if you're not eating right, you're not exercising, you're not taking care of your emotional, mental, spiritual wellness, you don't have anything that you're doing to pour back into yourself, to encourage yourself, to get restored, then it's going to be hard for you to show up. And so we want to make sure that whatever that is, like I said, if you pray, if you meditate, you go to church, if you have a hobby that you do, you need to go online and look up some meal prep ideas. You need to dedicate some specific days to getting that exercise in, whatever it is, or hanging out with friends, whatever it is that you need to do to kind of rejuvenate yourself before starting. You might be in the semester now, but ways that you can incorporate into your day or into the different months that we're going through. You can do it quarterly. Just have some things that you want to set up quarterly to do. Then I would definitely suggest that you do that, because if you do not, it is easy to get burnt out. It is easy to get discouraged. It is easy to not want to do things anymore. And in this particular space, because we have to show up for so many people, we have to make sure that when we pour, we have something there to give that is going to be good for those other people to receive. So we want them to receive good things when we pour it out. So we don't want to pour from an empty cup. So if we don't have anything, it's very difficult to try to motivate and get students interested, or even push through and get those papers done. So remember that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Okay. So next, what we have is that the culture of overwork isn't sustainable. So like I was mentioning earlier, as academics, and I know when I first started out, because I'm just trying to make sure that I do everything and I'm putting my whole self into what I'm doing, I would find myself working all types of hours. So we work outside of work as well because we're trying to catch up. And if you have a lot of meetings, that's what it may feel like. But we want to kind of move away from that. We don't want that to be our norm. We know that that's not sustainable if we think about that, not pouring from an empty cup. So if we're up working, we're not sleeping. If we're up working sometimes, I know from some colleagues I heard, you're not eating lunch. Sometimes you may skip it because you're working through lunch because you have so much you have to get done. And that's not something that we want to perpetuate. It's so easy to kind of get caught up in it. And so it's not the easiest thing to kind of deviate from, but it is something that we want to. And if you've been following me for a while, if you've heard me talk about anything, this is something that I have been intentional about creating a new norm, or what we have a normal that is associated with going through academia in the process. And for me, I am intentional about defining what that norm is or the status quo because I want to have a good experience and I want you to have a good experience too. And so that means we have to break down some of these ways of thinking and ways of doing things, which is why this is entitled The Radical Act of Prioritizing Yourself in Academia. And so we want to move away from doing overworking. It is possible to do work and not overwork yourself. And so that's what we want to do more of in 2025. We want to show up in ways, again, that is going to promote our wellness as well as getting work done. So we want to work smarter and not harder. And so that comes with prioritizing yourself and your wellness as you go through this process. Okay. So next, going back to that, your wellness equals better impact. I mean, and I cannot stress this enough. The moment that you go to sleep and you get that rest versus trying to push through and you can barely keep your eyes open, you would have done more taking the hour or two to go sleep than to stay up and push through. So let me say that one more time. Going to sleep for those 2 hours, you will be more productive than staying up trying to push through and you can barely keep your eyes open. So anytime you prioritize your wellness, you're going to get that time back eventually because you'll be able to do whatever you're doing a little bit faster than what you were before if you didn't have that rest or if you were eating something that wasn't good for you or if you didn't exercise and kind of get your energy up for the day, get your, endorphins going and everything. And so you want to prioritize it, even your emotional and mental health, because if your emotional and mental health is not together, then you can't go off and do that research. You're not going to be able to do it effectively. And so one thing that I like to try to remind us in academia that we often forget is that we are whole people. Yes, we're professors. We do this research, we do teaching, we do service, but we are whole people. We like to go do things like the movies. We like to go out and eat. We have different hobbies outside of what we do for our research that we like doing. We have families. We have friends. So we're whole people. And so that should be taken into consideration even in terms of our job. That is one portion of who you are and what you do on a day-to-day basis. And so that means that if I'm not prioritizing some of that other time with some of those other things, that's not helping me to be restored. So I'm not pouring from an empty cup, but it's also keeping me in that, work. And life is not all about work, but it is about integration and putting all of those pieces together in terms of our full life and who we are together to make a cohesive life, which is what we want. And so again, putting your wellness first, prioritizing yourself and your wellness first is going to help you have a better impact. You'll be in good health. You will be able to think clear. You'll be getting sleep. You'll be spending time with all the people that you want to spend time with. And that is the goal, to be able to pour better into the people that we care about and into the people that we're trying to help be prepared to go out and make a better impact as well in terms of our students, in terms of helping people out, in terms of our research, right? So if you have certain research topics, then what you're doing when you're well rested, taking care of yourself, is going to be able to impact those people effectively and bring change. And that's what we want. But we don't want to do it and we're broke down and we're tired and we're barely making it. That's not how we want to do this or go through this process. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. So how can you do this? Well, you need to start small. So small shifts lead to big changes. I know there's a lot of books out there that talk about doing these little small changes that lead to big changes. And so this is so true. And the thing about starting small is that you will eventually see over time how you're changing different habits and goals. So Atomic Habits is a good book that kind of talks about this, if you want to go get that. But just start off small. So like during your day, taking time to just kind of refresh. So normally I try not to schedule any meetings during lunchtime because I try to take that as my time to reset. The reason why I say lunchtime is really good is because depending on what your class schedule is, you may have a class in the morning and you may have a class in the afternoon. So that midday, you're going to need to reset before moving into that afternoon class. So that's a great time to sit if you want to read, if you want to do some type of devotion, if you want to listen to a podcast about something that could get you re-energized, you want to just sit in silence, you just eating your lunch and just enjoying that. Sometimes I have a coloring book at work, so sometimes I color to just kind of reset. So anything you want to do, or even if you have time on campus, a lot of places have gyms or the centers where you can go do exercise and you just want to go walk around in the inside. So anything like that, or even walk outside to get yourself re-energized, then that's something that you can do. If you want to write, like I said, you can do that, or anything that you feel like can help you in terms of your wellness that you can kind of keep up. So you want something small enough that you don't really fall off in doing it. And so that's why starting small and being consistent, like every day or over time, doing that will be helpful to see those big changes. So like I said, anything that you can think of that's just like a small thing, try to do that. Even going to see a therapist, that's always good as well too, to be able to talk to someone else or develop your even a cohort to meet with, to just talk about what's going on, to kind of encourage each other. So anything small, start doing that. You will definitely start to see those changes. Okay. So the next thing is to be a role model for balance. So balance here can be a little misleading because we all know in academia it's not really balance. Because sometimes we may put more time and energy into one area than another area at different points in time. So the biggest thing is you want to be a role model for wellness. So if you're telling people to take rest, if you're telling people don't overwork, then you need to model that first. So that's something that I try to do with the students that I work with. So if I'm not going to be working too hard, you're not going to be working too hard, because I know that doing that overwork is not sustainable, like we talked about earlier. And so it's important that you take the time to really make sure that you're modeling what you're telling other people to do, which is why you'll see a lot of posts from me talking about, nope, I took some time. I'm not going to overdo it. I did a post a while ago on one of my pages talking about coming back into the new semester. Sometimes you can feel like this pressure, like I have to get this done. And that was a feeling I said I did not want to take with me into 2025. And so if you're like me and you don't want to take that into 2025 with you, then what I suggest you do is just take some time to kind of figure out where that's coming from, and to do one of those things that I mentioned earlier, to just kind of reset yourself, figure out what's making you kind of feel that pressure. And I know we have a lot that we have to do. I know I do have a lot to do, but I promise that I didn't start working on creative stuff for class or doing anything right away because I didn't want to feel this rush or pressure to get it done. So I had to wait till I was in a more calm state and I'm feeling like, okay, I think I know how I want to map this out and do it, which is what I've been doing over the last week or two, feeling it a little bit more. And so that's what you have to figure out. So if you don't want to feel that way, then take some time to get yourself to a space where you feel like you can do it, but you're not going to be feeling this pressure or this rush to do it, even though we may have some deadlines, because that's not letting you do it from a good place. And so I want to be doing everything from a place of wellness, a place of calm, like I'm ready to work on this. I'm in the mind space to work on this. And so it's hard to do that when you're feeling pressure or you're feeling all of these things on your shoulders. So show up as a model for wellness. Or if you want to say balance, balance. And so here's our last point. So wellness is not a luxury. It's a necessity. So we often treat it as a luxury, like I have to do this big thing or I have to participate in these specific things in order to get wellness. But wellness is whatever you make it that is going to work for you to help you show up as your best self. Because in 2025, we want to show up being effective. We want to show up mentally well, emotionally well, physically well. And some things that we forget is that everything is connected. So whatever is going on, I should say it like this, if something is going on in our mind, it's going to affect our body. It's going to affect our spirit. It's going to affect our, emotional state. It's going to affect all of that. It's going to affect our soul. And so even the same thing with our physical, it's going to affect our mental. And all of those things are connected because, again, we're whole people. And so if one of them is lacking in an area, we have to figure out why. Why is this particular area lacking? And we have to take time to sit down and process through it. And so I wanted to end on this one, but I wanted to kind of also share something because I know that since 2020 up until now, although some people may not say it all the time, but various people have been going through some type of grief, whether it's from someone passing away, us losing something, us going through something, just experiencing the pandemic when that first started off up until now, and different things going on. And this is one reason why I wanted to put this out in terms of prioritizing, doing it as a radical act, because if you don't, it won't be good. So if you haven't gone through any type of grief, then I encourage you. I know it can be difficult being in academia because we have to show up and be on when we're in the classroom with our colleagues and things of that nature. And we all don't necessarily know everything that's going on with everyone. So I encourage you to show grace, but also those who are going through it, it can be hard to do that while showing up. And so I would encourage you to take the time to process through your grief. Because if you do not process through your grief, it is going to show up in the classroom. It's going to show up at work. It's going to show up in other areas. And you need to be able to release whatever you're feeling at whatever speed or time that you can do it. But you have to give yourself the time to do it. So whether that's you take some of that time to journal, whether you take that to sit in silence or to just have a moment to like get it out, whichever way you do that, you need to make sure that you put that in to your schedule, as well as those times that I mentioned before where you just need to sit and reset. You need to take that time. But for grief, you don't want it to show up. And you can tell when you're not dealing with it because it starts to show up. You start to feel it in your body. You start to see it in the way that you interact with people. And even though everybody may not know all that's going on, you have an obligation to process through it so that it doesn't hinder you moving forward. And so I just wanted to leave you all with that. Please take care of yourself. Again, please take care of yourself. It is super important for us to be able to receive all that you have to give to us in an effective manner, because what you have is valuable. And like I like to end all of my time when I have with you guys, is to remind you that even now it's super critical for you to do your work, not someone else's, but to do your work so that we can receive all the value that you have to give us. So until next time, be well. I'll talk to you soon and do your work.